First on the ball, and secondly, you've remembered it all, because you're saved on that. But I would like to get you to use your machines, please, because we want to do a poll. We're going to talk about ASEAN and Southeast Asia, and the riding that demographic and digital challenge. So please go on your machines now, because we have a poll. We'd like to know what you're thinking, because I've got to, in the next 30 minutes, make sure that we've got some kind of idea of how difficult and how challenging the issues are for Southeast Asia. ASEAN has been a great success story, as Kishore Mahbubani has just written in a piece for One Review with Kristen Lang. It's an unexpected success. No one expected ASEAN to work, bringing together in the 60s the extraordinary divergence of what was happening in this region. It's been an extraordinary success. But there are now new challenges as well. So where is the poll? Here it is. Can you please go to polling on your handset, and please give us your view of what do you think is the single biggest challenge Southeast Asia faces in its efforts to boost the region's economic vibrancy? The sheer size of the market, youth and aging population, and the digital divide spectrum. Those are the three areas we're going to be talking about. But can we just get your view? What do you think is the biggest challenge Southeast Asia is facing? Okay, over half, it's the digital divide spectrum, and that's what we're going to be talking about here with one of our guests. So, digital divide spectrum, 51%, 37% for youth and aging population, and the sheer size of the market. Right, there, gentlemen, you have the data. I don't have to tell you more about what this session is about. You have the data of what they are thinking. I now need to know what you are thinking. I'm not going to introduce you all because Jennifer has just done it. Chatib from Indonesia. Let's start off immediately with the lack of investment and key structural reforms that have impeded the purported growth at the moment. And please, if you can, use your machines to just drop any ideas you've got which you want me to put to them. We're very short for time because we're running over, but I have a way of making sure your ideas can still get into the mix by using your handsets, please, on the app. Thank you.
Well, demographic bonus can be a double-edged sword. If you fail to accelerate growth and to produce jobs, there is a risk of growing old without, growing rich. So that is why we need an investment. And if we want to solve this problem with the investment, we need to do the structural reform. Whereas in my view, there are several issues that's very important. The first one is the reform on the labor market. Because if you want to provide jobs, you need the flexible labor market. The second one is on the fiscal side. You probably need the public investment on the infrastructure, support for some specific age group, like education, like health, pension fund, the health system. The third one is to streamline the regulation in order to improve the business climate. But the thing is, all of this structural reform is easier to be said than done. I quoted what Jean-Claude Juncker said. We all know what to do, we just don't know how to get re-elected after we've done it. So I think the key issue is, all the structural reform, how could we deliver this economic reform?
How much do you think that is a constraint, that issue of re-election?
If your political resources is limited, my suggestion is, let's start to create a success story. Once you get the political support, you move to the more complex and difficult reform. But if you have this unlimited political resources, you can go to uphill battle. So, for example, in the issue of the health system, you probably need to move into what I call the defined contribution rather than defined benefit on the pension system. And this is not going to be easy.
But to be clear, you're saying that politics is quite a constraint in this.
It is.
Cesar from Philippines.
Actually, ASEAN is not homogeneous. So there are parts of ASEAN that's still very young, Philippines and Indonesia in particular, and there are those that are old. So I think what we need is labor mobility as well as mutual recognition of qualifications. Another is also coordination of courses, especially in the technical space, with the private sector, so that the production of the educational system is aligned with the needs of industry.
Thanks. I'm just going to invite anyone who wants to come in, please either do it on this machine or put up your hand now, because I'm going to do things as quickly as Sarah was able to do it and make it very intense, picking up any point. I'm not going to leave it to the end. Does anyone want to come in at the moment? Not at the moment. Okay, let's move on. Please, what's your view?
Well, I think on labor mobility, I think the region on the supply side it's quite liberal, but it's, on the demand side sometimes there's a lot of restrictions, and a lot of this is driven by politics, and you become a lot more seriously when it comes around the election. I don't know what our leaders talk about whenever they meet. They meet quite often, and I think when we discuss, I think they focus on substance of what we need to do, and rather than having them just taking voting hands.
Thitinan, I mean, after all, in Thailand, you've had some significant political pressures recently.
Yeah, I say the market is leading the way, but politics is getting in the way. So if you look at Thailand as kind of the hub of mainland Southeast Asia, we have more than 3.5 million workers from Myanmar, migrant workers, another 1 million from Cambodia, another 100,000 plus from Laos. So a way of alleviating, as Chatib said, demography is a mixed bag. I mean, there are opportunities, there are a lot of challenges, so we have to address both. I see that one way is to look at migrations, immigration policies, for example. I mean, a lot of these workers in Thailand are illegal, and the state doesn't allow them to register properly, the state harasses them. And so, I think this also has implications for the global landscape. I mean, if you look at migrations, barriers are being put up, are being erected, but in fact, we need to take down barriers, to reduce barriers, so that we have migration, labor flows, and in addition, I think extension of the working age. I mean, the problem with the working age, the aging society is that they age, but they don't die. They don't work anymore, and they still live. So the working age in Thailand, if you can believe it, it was set up 60 years ago that you retire at 60. Right? Back when people were living at 65, but now they live until they're 80 and more. But it's very difficult to enact these bureaucratic reforms because the bureaucracy is deeply embedded, and you can imagine a lot of military generals, right? They want retirement to be at 60 so the others can come up. So this is another problem. And I think also the education, I mean, it's a cliche to say education reforms and all of that, but there are other ways. We have to make connectivity cheaper, for example, and to make sure that the people, while they're working before retiring, they put in a lot more before they leave.
But I think we probably can combine this labor mobility, the migration, with the compensation policy. So if you provide a sort of like a compensation for the losers, I think the political resistance will be relatively less. Yeah, and then try to find a sort of like a projects that all countries can work together. Let me give an example about infrastructure. Every country in ASEAN will support for that idea. If people feel the benefit of it, then let's move to the more complex and the delivery form.
Just at this point, let me try and get a sense of the underpinning of what's coming down the track with CPTPP and also RCEP. Is that helping to unleash, to liberalize, to break down the barriers, all four of you? Chatib?
Yes, I agree. I think especially the issue of this ASEAN as a single entity is a very important, looking from the geopolitical perspective. This somehow will help when the other part of the world become protectionist. Somehow we as the ASEAN countries should maximize the benefit of the intra-trade. But of course, the biggest issue related to the RCEP, for example, now is about the issue of India.
Cesar?
Well, my preference is actually the RCEP, simply because it focuses on ASEAN as one body, rather than DPP, which tends to break us up.
But is this a big move in the right direction?
It is definitely a move in the right direction, not only in expanding the market, but in increasing the quality of trade, because there are provisions there, for example, on intellectual property right protection, etc., that will force us to all up our game.
I think from a private perspective, you realize that the private sector themselves play their role in trying to promote inter-ASEAN cooperation, be it originally supposed to be labor, capital, trade, but knowledge as well. So apart from what people in the better sectors are doing right now.
The world trading system is finished. multilateralism is gone.
Finished.
Finished, pretty much, right? I mean,
Is that your working assumption now?
well, I think it's self-evident. We'd like to see it otherwise, and we have to keep working to make it otherwise, but I think that's moribund. So we have regional answers and bilateral solutions. The CPTPP, only 4 ASEAN members are in it. You also have to look at the RCEP, and I think RCEP now has a good chance of being finalized this year, maybe signed next year. So for ASEAN, RCEP is a better way.
And that's a driver, is it? To try and improve on many of these issues.
Sort of a multilateral solution and way forward. I think this is what we have to have as the second best approach. But beyond that, I think it has to be more inclusive and more open. So CPTPP without the US also carries a lot less weight, maybe 11% of the global GDP. So I think RCEP for us in this region, in this neighborhood, is much more important.
In fact, with what's happening around the world, it increases the importance of ASEAN to really further integrate. If you allow me to move into what the audience looked at as a big challenge, I actually look at it as an opportunity.
You're talking about digital now.
Digital, yeah.
That's what we wanted you to lead on now.
Exactly. I look at it as a $1 trillion market opportunity and $1 trillion investment opportunity. If you look at ASEAN now, intra-ASEAN trade is about 24% of GDP. But the bulk of it is in intermediate goods as part of global supply chains. Very few is final consumption goods. And it is in digital commerce that we can actually change this as we encourage SMEs to expand their market beyond the local markets, beyond the national, to actually look at it on a broader basis. But that is a big challenge because right now, if you look at e-commerce in the Philippines, 60% of the sales is coming from local vendors, 40% is actually coming from China, Korea, and Japan, and outside of the region. Very little is coming from within the region. And that is something we need to correct if we are going to really see the potential, the digital dividend of ASEAN. What do we need to do to make this happen? First, I think we need to harmonize our standards, product recognition, customs process, make it easier to move goods from one part of ASEAN to another. The logistical cost of moving from one ASEAN country to another is much higher than, say, moving from China to ASEAN. Singapore made a big step in 2018 by creating the network trading platform. I think each ASEAN country should set up a network trading platform and then connect that to the ASEAN single window. That way, it will take only one entry, and then the goods can actually cross borders.
What are the obstacles at the moment, though, Cesar?
Many. I think bureaucratic obstacles, no?
But is there political will to break them? Is there political will to break that?
Well, as a nation, I think because of the politics also always gets in the way. People tend to look at this from a nationalistic standpoint, when in fact it is to the interest of the country to actually open up so that you make the whole region more vibrant. If I just continue with my 3 other points, the digital dividend also includes the opportunity to improve productivity. For example, when you look at ASEAN manufacturing companies now, only 20% use automated manufacturing processes, only 20% use ERPs, only 30% are aware of what opportunities there are in manufacturing 4.0. That's why our productivity level is about 1/10 of the US. So with this digital opportunity, we can actually make a major leap to be more competitive. The SMEs that account for the bulk of enterprises in the region, accounts for the bulk of employment as well. The digital age is an opportunity for them to go into the mainstream and again leapfrog. But what is needed is education, literacy, so that we can make our people trust the internet.
The
people, both the customers, so that they can actually give their data, give their money, and trust the whole process, so that they get used to paying not with cash, which is the popular payment method in the region now, but towards the other alternative payment mechanisms.
It's working very well in East Africa, as we heard from the president.
East Africa, I think, has made, some countries in particular, have made major strides. And I think that's what we have to follow if we are to make the digital opportunity an asset for ASEAN.
All right, let me give you a couple of reflections from the audience and anyone who wants to come in quickly. We've only got about 15, well, even less than that left. Hear this from Yaqub Ibrahim. What can we do at the next stage as an e-commerce platform across the region can lift entrepreneurs, big and small? Can we do this as the next stage of ASEAN? I'd like to ask you, all four of you. And what is ASEAN's collective growth strategy? That from Ken Chua. But this issue of can we do this as the next stage in ASEAN development?
We have to follow what India has done. Digital IDs for everyone. In fact, in India...
Across ASEAN?
Well, across ASEAN, if we are to trade amongst each other, we need to have our KYC. So digital IDs is very important. The other important thing is interoperability of the various payment systems so that you can pay from one country to the other. And then third, physical infrastructures. Make our ports better, make our airports better, make logistics more seamless.
All right, I'm having to move this very quickly, but I've got a point here from Patrick Cesar. How do we ensure that the impact of increased digitization will not lead to greater inequality and digital divide between the more developed and the less developed ASEAN countries? Let me just ask others here, Chatib and others. Points of view from Kuala Lumpur.
Well, I think the answer for this is somehow the government need to provide training, the quality of work, which is very important because my take on this issue of this, reduction of unemployment is not about the unemployment issue, but the redefinition of the new jobs, and it will require skill. But one thing that I'm concerned about, and probably would like to hear from Cesar later on, is not only about the digital issue, but we probably need to talk also about the government 4.0. How the government should position themselves, because the product cycle is getting shorter and shorter. What we need under this kind of situation is an agile bureaucracy. But agile bureaucracy is oxymoron. There is no way the bureaucracy can be agile. So, this is the thing that we probably need to discuss more.
All right, Farid, but this issue of inequality, is that a genuine danger?
Yeah, I think the question is referring to what we experienced before, going to a free market where, instead of doing the income quality better, it actually makes it bigger. But I'm quite hopeful with the ability to use digital platforms as a channel because the knowledge that we have using algorithms, then we can allow us to access to markets which we before never had the ability to do so. For example, like lending. There are in the case of Indonesia, there's 60 million SME, really micro SMEs, for example. Most of them we can lend money to because the way we do our credit card business. But using platform, using digital, we finally be able to have access to it. We're still learning, we don't have the solutions yet. But that may help to improve income quality.
All right, let me move on because we've got 4 issues we're trying to cover to Thitinan.
One last point on education, I think.
Okay.
It's very important because when you look at the ASEAN labor force, only 0.5% are ICT workers compared to the other more advanced countries where are upwards of 2%. And in fact, most IT companies have to import IT workers from India. So if we are to realize this opportunity, we need to have...
Thitinan, can I just, before you move on to stage 3 about the shrinking of the working age population, building on what we've heard from Sarah, let me just put in this comment from Kai Shu. Migration of communities displaced by conflict or environmental factors are disrupting social equilibriums in host countries they move to. How do you suggest governments manage these populations? In other words, a management issue here. Take it away on the working age population issue.
Yes, it's not easy. I think that governments and leaders have to find a way of marketing and also selling these difficult policies. You can see that in Germany, Chancellor Merkel took a big gamble, accepting over millions, hundreds of thousands of refugees from the Middle East. And she rationalized it, explained it, justified it that they need the workers, they need these laborers. So in a similar way, I think we have a lot of humanitarian issues in Southeast Asia. The Rohingya crisis, I think we all know about that. I think that ASEAN can do a little bit more to address this by perhaps accepting a sum. There has to be the conversation has to be started, the dialogue. But yes, it requires leadership, some bureaucratic reforms, change of mindset, but it can also be rationalized on imperatives of having a younger population, alleviating the demographic pressure. So if it's sold the right way, I think that it's difficult, but it can be done, and it's necessary. There were earlier points about the digital divide, and I think inequality exists within ASEAN societies, each country, but also across ASEAN. Digitization has a huge potential. Also big risk that the inequality would exacerbate, but huge potential I can see in politics. A lot of people are more politically conscious in Thailand, Cambodia, and Myanmar. There's also a lot of polarization that comes with it. But now if we can transcend this transition across the divide into other realms like economic and growth and jobs and income, I think we have to create a lot of low-hanging fruits. So, for example, no one would oppose maybe more online access, making smartphones available, and then some basic education. So I think this has a lot of opportunity for e-commerce, for example. You can see Grab and Gojek and so on, and it's only just the beginning. I think it's the onset of what is to come. So the digitization, I think governments have a big role, but the market has even a bigger role.
Farid, let me pick up on the fourth point, which you're going to speak to, about moving the economy to distribution models, about how there's a blurring now of sector boundaries and national boundaries. Which direction is that moving at the moment?
To the right. There's a blurry in sector right now, and we're seeing that in the financial sector as well. And I look at the interaction of fintech players and now possibly the platform players, the super apps, you mentioned Gojek, you mentioned Grab as well, coming to the space of financial industry, particularly on the consumer segment. And it is a very worried from an income perspective, but at the same time very exciting as well. So we are trying to figure out how to expand our box that we're operating in mind-wise, and see what else can we do from income perspective, how we can move beyond what we're doing right now, which is the traditional banking space that we do. And I see a lot of my competitors, friends, and advisors are doing the same thing, not just in the country, in Malaysia, but around Malaysia as well. So, and we will see organizations, banking institutions be quite different from what it used to be. We will see, new players to come into the space, especially the big players, which is already happening. And we will see some evolution of traditional business to something completely something different in the future.
Could I just, in the last couple of minutes, ask all four of you, picking up on what Kai-Jin Chu has said about migration of communities and disrupting equilibriums, and also what Kim Chua said about, is it a pan-Asian, is it pan-ASEAN, or is it really every man for himself? I come from a part of the planet where the European Union is beginning to come apart because of all the pressures from migration, populism, nationalism. Nationalism is being bred by many of these issues, the pushback by the population. Could it be that while ASEAN is a very strong union at the moment, actually there are forces which are really quite sinister, which could actually undermine it? Chatib.
Well, I think with the positive notes on ASEAN, because Southeast Asian countries and East Asian economy are benefited from globalization. That is why I believe that the support for the open trade, cooperation and investment, even the labor mobility is there, because we feel the benefit of it. It is probably different story with the case of the European, of the advanced country like United States, because you become a victim, you feel to become a victim of globalization because the lost competitiveness with China.
Cesar, in the Philippines, we were talking before we came on about the real pressures now, the real concerns. Could it be that the radicalization of concerns actually acts against a unity, a greater homogenization of ASEAN?
I think we really need to work on the fundamentals first. We have to work on education. We have to work on doing business much easier so that there's opportunity for everyone. We need to make ASEAN central to our agenda. In an age of militarism and diminishing expectation, we have to increase our expectation on ASEAN. We have no choice. That is our ticket moving forward.
Chityan.
Well, it's not as if we have kind of a social peace and cohesion and tranquility. I mean, there are challenges within in every society. In Thailand, for example, market forces have superseded nationalist inclinations. So I mentioned that a lot of 3.5 workers from Myanmar, over a million from Cambodia, and some from Laos, and there have not been a nationalist pushback in a country with virtually full employment. So there are market forces underpinning these labor flows. Now, it's not easy. These are hard choices. You can't just open up your economy and accept all these workers. But at the same time, we need them. We need them. And I think in Thailand, I would go as far as to advocate giving them workers from nearby countries permanent residency, healthcare, education, and so on. And eventually, they will be great contributors to the Thai economy. And this can also, I think, has implications for the broader ASEAN labor market.
I have to say, coming from the European Union, that's a debate that's happening. We need labour, but we don't want the people. This is a really fundamental issue. How do you get over that? And it's acting as a radicalisation of politics. Final word, Farid.
I think the difference between ASEAN and Euro is I think we have sovereign control between the difference between the two. We actually have sovereign control. But ASEAN is together 1967 because of the threat of communism, more for security. And today we see ASEAN as a potential for us to compete against the biggest economy out there. On surface, there's a lot of agreement about what we need to do. I think we should push more among products like this, the power that but we are prepared to negotiate that.
Right, well this has been a bit of an elevator session, but we've got through an enormous amount. Let me just give you one comment here from Tan Chin Hui. I'm involved in one of the world's largest trading companies, and the ASEAN digital trade platform is a good suggestion. But the fundamental issues that Asian SME faces is not technological, but more on real operational, labour, HR, and regulatory systems. He asked for comment, but unfortunately we're out of time. But I want to make sure there are other voices coming from the floor. So thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you very much, everyone, for that session.